She stood still at gate 17, the world rushing past her in streaks of noise and color, children's laughter, lovers' goodbyes, boarding calls swallowed by static. Her breath clouded the glass as she stared through the window at a silver plane gleaming under soft August rain. She wasn't crying. Not yet. But her fingers trembled around the handle of a worn leather suitcase, the kind with old brass corners and a story stitched into every scuff. Her red scarf fluttered loosely at her neck, silk, a gift from her mother once, now damp from the mist outside. It clung to her like memory. She tightened it without thinking. A couple passed her, the girl's laughter high and soft, the boy carrying both their bags with ease. For a moment, she watched them, her eyes blank but too wide, like they were trying to drink in something long lost. Her fingers dug into the handle of the suitcase. Then let go. The departure board clicked overhead. Flight 294 to Zurich. Final call. Her eyes didn't move. He had called her ambitious in a pitiful kind of way. That's what he said last night. Just before the ring slid back across the marble counter. Just before he smoothed his tie, smirked, and told her that love was nice, but not enough, not when someone came from so little. Her heart had stopped right there in that penthouse kitchen. But her face hadn't moved. She didn't ask why. Didn't beg. She just looked at him like she was watching a stranger walk out of her skin. And now, this airport. This suitcase. This scarf. Her hand still trembling slightly as she reached inside her coat pocket and touched the folded letter, creased and fragile from too much rereading. It was from a man she barely remembered. Her grandfather. The one no one talked about. The one who had left her something she wasn't supposed to know existed. The wind outside rose, rattling the glass. Her hair brushed her cheek. She turned, slowly, and looked at the boarding gate like it might open into a different life. Someone called her name over the speaker. Wrong pronunciation. She didn't flinch. Inside, she could still hear his voice echoing, "I can't build a future with someone who brings nothing to the table." Her lips parted, as if to answer, but no words came. Just one long breath. Quiet. Cold. Certain. She stepped forward. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough. The suitcase wheels hummed against the floor. The scarf slipped from her neck, and she didn't stop to catch it. The suitcase bumped gently against her knee as she sat alone near the terminal cafe, its brown leather cracked along the seams, the brass corners dulled by time. She ran her fingers along a faded sticker on the side, Paris, 1972. It had once belonged to her father. He used to tell her stories about it, how it had been packed with dreams they couldn't afford to chase. "This bag's been farther than we ever got," he used to say, resting it at the foot of her bed. "But one day, you'll carry it past the place where we stopped." Back then, she'd laughed. She was 11, full of impossible plans and the kind of hope that only kids believe in. Now, 29, sitting in an airport with no one waiting at the other end, she wasn't sure if she'd made it farther, or just lonelier. She sipped cold coffee. Her eyes kept drifting to the glass again. Outside, a mother lifted her son high into her arms as he ran from the arriving plane. His tiny hands pressed to her cheeks. A man greeted an elderly woman with flowers. A couple kissed hard like they'd survived something. She looked down at her phone. No messages. No missed calls. Of course not. He had made sure there would be nothing left to go back to. The apartment was in his name. The car, too. Even the shared friends had gone quiet overnight, loyal not to love, but to lifestyle. One had texted her, "It's a shame. But you'll land on your feet. You always do." She had stared at that message for a long time before deleting it. A soft cough caught her attention. A man, early 30s, clean-cut, travel-wrinkled shirt, stood a few feet away. He wasn't smiling, just watching her suitcase like he recognized it. Or maybe just noticing she hadn't moved in 20 minutes. She met his eyes briefly. He nodded once. Not intruding. Just seeing. Her fingers tensed around the cup. The scarf. Her mother's scarf. It lay where she had dropped it, between gate seats and gum wrappers, like something discarded. She hadn't meant to let it go. But now, retrieving it felt too deliberate, too much like going back for something that didn't belong to her anymore. Final boarding call for Flight 294 to Zurich. Her stomach tightened. She stood, hand reaching for the suitcase, but her feet didn't move. The man stepped aside, silently clearing the path without asking. Still watching. And she turned her head back toward the scarf. It hadn't been picked up. Still there. Still waiting. Her lips parted slightly. A confused smile, or maybe a wince. Her eyes flicked to the gate, then back. One step forward. And then she hesitated. The rain had thickened into a steady curtain, tapping against the wide windows like a clock too eager. Thunder rumbled in the far-off sky, low, restrained, the kind of sound that held back more than it gave. She reached for the scarf. The silk was soaked now, its red turned rusted rose, limp in her fingers. Her hand lingered there longer than it should have, and when she straightened, the man was still watching. Not staring, just present, like the quiet space between thoughts. He didn't speak. Just sat 2 seats over now, legs crossed loosely, a travel-stained backpack beside him. His shoes caught her eye, not dirty, but worn at the heel. Polished over too many times. And when he reached into his coat, a frayed wallet emerged. A photo peeked out, bent at the corner, 2 children in front of a truck, arms around a woman with tired eyes and a Sunday dress smile. She swallowed hard. People like him weren't usually seen in first-class terminals. Neither was she. Not really. Their eyes met again, and this time she didn't look away. He's running, too, she thought. But is he running towards something, or away? Didn't mean to spook you, he said finally, his voice soft but shaped with old wounds. Southern, maybe. Or just sad. You dropped the scarf. I know. Her voice sounded strange in her own ears, too alive after hours of silence. She folded the scarf slowly, fingers tracing the hem. The red dye had bled slightly into the cream stitching. It looked like veins. You heading to Zurich? He asked. Not casual. Not nosy. Like someone testing the weight of something before picking it up. She hesitated. My whole life was supposed to be here, she said instead. And then, with a breath she didn't plan, but he said I wasn't enough. The man nodded, not asking who. He didn't need to. He shifted slightly, the old wallet slipping to the floor. She bent to help. Their fingers brushed. He flinched. So did she. Outside, lightning cracked, briefly painting the terminal in stark white light. For 1 second, she saw him, really saw him. The loneliness tucked behind the eyes. The kind that doesn't beg to be seen. She wanted to board the plane. She wanted to sit beside someone who didn't ask what she did or what she owned. She wanted to scream. Or sleep. Or maybe just breathe. I'm not who I was yesterday, she murmured. He tilted his head. Me neither. The speaker buzzed. Final call. Zurich. She stood. He didn't. She took 1 step. Then stopped. The scarf slipped from her hand again. But this time, she didn't move to pick it up. She moved again toward the gate, this time faster. Her boarding pass clenched tightly in her palm, damp from the sweat she hadn't noticed until now. Her heels clicked against the floor like a countdown. Her breath quickened. Don't look back. Don't look at him. The woman at the counter offered a practiced smile. Final call, ma'am. You're the last one. She nodded, lips tight. Guilt bloomed in her throat like smoke. But it wasn't guilt for leaving him. It was for leaving herself behind, again. A murmur to her left. Two older women in tailored blazers glanced her way, one of them whispering behind a manicured hand. She doesn't look first class, one said softly. The other replied, maybe a standby upgrade. They laughed like glass clinking, pretty and sharp. She clenched her jaw. Her scarf was still missing. She had let it fall like it meant nothing. And now it felt like a betrayal. Wasn't I supposed to hold on to the things that made me? A sudden hush fell. Behind her, footsteps. Familiar. Steady. She turned, slowly, and there he was. Not close. Not chasing. Just standing at the edge of the terminal chairs, holding the red scarf gently between both hands. He didn't wave it. Didn't call her name. Just looked at her like he had been carrying the weight of something unsaid. The scarf, now dried at the edges, fluttered faintly in the air from the AC vent above. Some people carry more than just bags, she thought. They carry silence. Regret. Unwritten letters. The version of you that never got to speak. And suddenly her eyes burned. She stepped back from the counter. Just a few steps. Her chest was rising too fast now. Her vision blurred. The room tilted, but the sound stayed sharp, boarding call, zippers, laughter, more judgmental glances. He didn't move toward her. He simply held the scarf out like an offering. Not to convince. Just to return what never should have been dropped. She took one more step. Then stopped. Her hands shook. I don't even know your name, she whispered. The air between them was thin, stretched like thread. You don't need to, he replied, voice low. But you'll remember I didn't try to save you. I just didn't let you forget yourself. That broke something. Quietly. Tears pooled but didn't fall. She looked at the scarf again, no longer just her mother's. Now, a witness to everything she'd nearly lost. The boarding door buzzed behind her. The attendant waited. She didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stood in the in-between, holding the scarf. And holding her breath. She stood frozen, the red scarf crumpled in her hand like a heartbeat she didn't know she was holding. The man had turned away now, no longer watching her. He walked toward a small hallway off to the side, marked private lounge, corporate access only. Just before the door closed behind him, she saw it, a nameplate glinting in the light. Weston Vale International Executive Access, a Vale. Her fingers went cold. Vale. She knew that name. It was stamped on the corner of every rejection letter she had received from the last company she'd begged for a second interview at, the one that called her ambitious but underqualified. The one that handled her ex-fiancé's portfolio. The one she almost sued when they lost her unpaid internship hours. Her breath hitched. She'd sat beside the man who owned the table she was never allowed to sit at. She looked down at the scarf again. The threads glowed faintly under the lights. She remembered how he'd held it, not possessively, but reverently. Like something fragile. Like something already lost once before. Her grip loosened. A folded card slipped from the inner hem of the scarf. Not hers. Hidden in the stitching. She opened it, hands trembling. For Lila, you carry joy in red. I carry the silence now. A Vale Lila. A daughter? A wife? Gone. Suddenly, His words echoed back. But you'll remember I didn't try to save you. I just didn't let you forget yourself. And before that, you'll carry it past the place where we stopped. She swayed slightly. The pain she thought was hers alone was reflected in someone else, like a mirror she hadn't meant to walk into. All this time, she'd seen him as a momentary stranger. But what if fate wasn't a crash, it was a quiet alignment? And what if she was already standing in the very place she was meant to run from? The attendant called out again. Last and final boarding. She looked up, and instead of walking to the gate, she turned. Fast. Toward the lounge door. Her heart pounded, not with panic, but resolve. Her heels echoed loudly now. A uniformed guard stepped forward, about to stop her. But before he could speak, the door opened. He was there, a veil. Still holding the photo from his wallet. His eyes met hers, not surprised. Not smiling. Just open. And she didn't flinch. She stepped through the doorway, the scarf around her neck once more. She didn't look back. She had already crossed the point of no return. The private lounge was quiet, too quiet. No flight announcements, no clattering suitcases, just the hush of thick carpet and second chances. He stood beside a rain-glossed window, the photo in one hand, her scarf still looped in the other. Behind him, a glass case displayed a line of gold fountain pens, awards, and a small framed sketch, a girl in a red scarf drawn in pencil, soft and incomplete. She paused just inside the threshold. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Lila was your daughter. He didn't look at her. She was. 5 years ago. A long breath. Car crash. She was wearing that scarf. I couldn't throw it away. The words landed between them with weight, but no apology. I didn't mean to pry, she said gently. I just needed to know what this was. He finally turned, his expression unreadable. You remind me of her. Not her face. Your way of walking into a room like it doesn't own you. And leaving, like you know it never did. Her breath caught. She had come here ready for something, maybe confrontation. Maybe escape. But this felt like neither. I didn't follow you, she said. I was going to leave. I really was. He nodded. But you didn't. The silence was electric. You applied to my company, he added. Twice. A flicker of a smile. They rejected you. I know, she said, voice flat. Apparently I was ambitious in a pitiful kind of way. He flinched, subtle, but there. I didn't see your name until this morning. After you dropped the scarf. She looked down at it again, worn, fragile, now carrying the weight of someone else's love, someone else's ending. She unlooped it from her neck and held it out. You should keep it. He stared at it for a long moment before shaking his head. No. You wore it differently. You needed it differently. The tension in her chest cracked like glass. I don't need anything, she said too quickly. He smiled softly. Everyone does. Even the ones who disappear before the goodbye. She didn't reply. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out her signed contract, something she had quietly accepted from a rival firm just last night. She stared at it, then slowly tore it in half. You don't owe me a job, she said. And I don't want to be chosen because I remind you of someone you lost. He looked at her again, closer now, something softer in his eyes. Not desire. Not pity. Just understanding. You're right, he said. And then he took the scarf from her hand. I'll keep it, he murmured, so I don't forget the stranger who reminded me how to let go. She stepped back toward the lounge door, her suitcase waiting quietly beside the exit. Outside, the airport pulsed with motion. But she didn't rush. Not anymore. At gate 17, a different girl now stood where she once had, young, lost, clutching a small bag and nothing else. For a moment, she almost went to her. Almost. But then she smiled, broken, whole, reborn, and walked on. Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. Weeks later, the city hummed beneath her like it had always been waiting. Not loud, not demanding, just breathing beside her. She walked alone across a quiet bridge, the morning fog curling around the rails like silk. A cup of black coffee warmed her hands. No makeup. No heels. Just sneakers and the sound of her own steady footsteps. Somewhere far behind her was the version of herself who once chased love like a lifeline and mistook cruelty for honesty. That girl would have clung to a man who saw her as a price tag, not a person. That girl would have begged. She no longer begged. Back at her small apartment, rented, modest, hers, a drawer remained half open. Inside, wrapped in clean white tissue, was the red scarf. Folded gently now. Not forgotten, just resting. Not hers anymore, and yet still part of her story. Sometimes she'd touch it without looking. And sometimes, only sometimes, she remembered his voice in the lounge, low and unsentimental. You wore it differently. You needed it differently. She hadn't seen him again. Didn't try. That part didn't need an ending. It already had one. Quiet. Human. Whole. The torn contract still sat on her bookshelf, unframed, beside an unopened bottle of wine she'd once been saving for a proposal that never came. She never taped the paper back together. She wanted to remember what it meant to choose herself, unapologetically, finally. A text from a new friend buzzed. She smiled and let it wait. On a park bench later that day, she scribbled into her notebook, half poetry, half memory. The words didn't always rhyme, but they always landed. She wrote not for revenge anymore, but release. Sometimes love is not romance, she wrote. It's recognition. Recognition of the girl you once buried. Recognition in the eyes of a stranger who didn't want to keep you, but saw you. Recognition of worth without proof. She watched a little girl run ahead of her mother across the lawn, scarf trailing behind like fire. The wind caught it and the child laughed. For the first time in years, she laughed too, small, but real. The world kept spinning, as if it never broke her. As if she never needed breaking to begin with. And when she stood to leave, the notebook slipped into her tote, her shoulders relaxed, her gaze no longer searching. What we survive is not who we are. That line stayed with her. She didn't know if she believed it yet, but it felt like a truth worth growing into. Some stories don't end. They just echo in someone else.